everyone, I'm Allie with PotomacBeads. Join me in making this Jingle Bell ornament. Thanks to Cheryl for this fun little design, making these little Jingle Bell ornaments. Keep in mind if you need any of the materials, they're listed in the beginning of the video, as well as near that like and subscribe button below me are the actual links to all the products that you can purchase from us at PotomacBeads.com, as well as PotomacBeads.eu. So we're going to begin by actually starting the middle of our bell here. And when I start the middle of the bell, what I'm going to do is start with right angle weave. I have my groupings of my bicone sitting here in 6 groups. The first group is 4, then 3, 3, 3, 3, 2. And that's going to help me to know exactly how many to put on and where I'm starting with. I have just a short piece of thread and I have a piece of black thread to show you how to get started with that right angle weave, since that's the most complicated thing of this project. You will want about 4 feet of beading thread in, generally speaking, about white or silver with this color, and that will get you started. So we're starting with the middle. You can leave thread at the beginning so that way you can come back to the beginning, or you can stitch back up. To start the right angle weave, I have a stop bead onto the bottom of my thread, and I'm going to add my 4 beads. When I add my 4 beads, I'm going to create a box. The box is going to have 2 sides and then a top and a bottom. From these 4 beads, to make my box, I want to go back into the thread from that original bead there, and I'm going from the stop bead through the 3 beads that I just put on. And that's going to turn that over into that right angle weave. I now have the stop bead in the bottom left corner of my box, and I have the top of my box, the bottom of my box, the right and the left side. This right side is going to become the left side in the next box. So I'm going to go to my next grouping, and this time I'm adding 3 because I already have one of the sides of my box. I'm going to sew down through that bead that's already there, adding on the 3. And then I'm always going to sew through 2 beads to come out the middle bead added. So I'm going to sew through the bottom of that next box, and then I'm going to sew through the right hand wall or the side of that box and come out towards the top. Again, my next set of my beads are there, and I know I need to add 3. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to sew up through in order to get that circle, and then again through those first 2 beads. Through the top bead going from left to right, and then down through, and I have my next grouping here of my 3 beads. And my grouping of my 3 beads, I'm going to add 1, 2, 3, and going to sew down through that bead that's already there. And as I sew through the bead that's already there, I'm going to sew over, down through the bottom, and up, because I'm always sewing through those 2 beads. We're going to repeat this 2 more times. I have my last pile here of my grouping of 3, and then I have my grouping of 2, which what I'm going to do is go ahead and connect these 2 together to make it rounded. So I've added my 5th right angle unit here, and to get my 6th, I'm going to be adding those 2 sides together. You're going to pick up one of your beads, go over to the stop bead, and sew up from that bicone from the bottom to the stop bead. And then when you come out the top, add your next bead, go back to that first side that you were coming out of, and sew down through that last bead on the opposite side. That's going to finish up that right angle unit and create that center. From here, we're going to get to the outer edge, and I'm going to sew through one of my top beads. That's going to get that center of the actual bell done, and then we're going to move on from there and do the top and the bottom. So where your beads are coming out of here, it's coming out of one of those side crystals, so one of the ones that sit vertically. We want to come out of one of the bicones that's sitting horizontally, sewing around again in a circle because we don't want to see any extra thread. And I'm going to add 1 SuperDuo to my thread and needle. From here, I'm going to go to the next crystal that sits that sideways and sew along. So when you're looking at it, the beads are going to be sitting that you have a bead on the bottom, bead on the top, and a bead down the middle. We're going to be sewing 1 SuperDuo down between each of those beads along the bottom. So when you end up here, you can see that one bead kind of fills in that space between those crystals. Here, Cheryl did a kind of magic wine color there, and you can see that one magic wine filling in between. So I'm going to continue filling in along the bottom here with my SuperDuos, one, and then fill into the bottom. So it's going to kind of fill in that bottom gap. One, over to the next bead that's facing the same way. So we're currently going through those vertical facing beads. Adding in one of our SuperDuo beads, and then onto the next bead. Add one, onto the next one. So you end up putting on 6 of your SuperDuo beads that are hanging right there at the start of the bell. From here, we're going to do something called a step up. So we're going to go from that first hole of the SuperDuo, and we are going to step the thread up so it's going from the first hole to the second hole. We're going to go through that first SuperDuo, and from there we're going to reverse the thread through that same SuperDuo so it's coming out the other hole. This will throw a little bit of thread on the side of the SuperDuo, and I used a gray so you could see it. Ideally with this I'd use gold thread or white thread. But with this you can see it a little bit more. And then coming out here, we're actually going to be adding some more SuperDuos. So in between every SuperDuo, we're going to go from having one SuperDuo to adding in 2. So 2 SuperDuos get added onto the next SuperDuo in line into that second open hole. You can see the kind of grab on there. 2 SuperDuos get added, and then into the next one there. Again, 2 get added. So this is going the whole way around this circle, adding in the 2 SuperDuos and sewing into the SuperDuo that's already there through the open hole. Sewing over to the next. And I'm almost done here. Have a couple more, 4 more to add. 1 and 2. And then as you add the last 2 and come through that original SuperDuo, we are going to once again do a step up. So I have 2 of my SuperDuos on. I'm going through that original bead that you can see a little bit of the thread stepping up there, and through both of my SuperDuos that I added on first. So through those first 2 through that bottom hole. When I give a little tight pull, you can see my bell kind of starting there and getting a little bit bigger at the bottom and a little bit smaller at the top where those bicones sit. From here, we're going to go through, and every other bead, we are going to be adding an 11-0 or a SuperDuo. So where we're going to add the SuperDuo is below that center bead, and then we're going to add another, or I'm sorry, the 11-0 is going to be below that center SuperDuo, and then the new SuperDuo is going to be added between the 2. So when you're looking at it here, I'm going to add a couple more of my SuperDuos. We are adding in and stepping up. So to step up here, we through the 2 SuperDuos that we added as we went around this loop. You're going to step up through that second SuperDuo, going from the bottom hole or the hole closest to the bicones to that top hole. At this point too, give a little tug on your thread, and that's going to tighten up that thread and needle. Between the 2 SuperDuos, that's where we're adding another SuperDuo and sewing through to the second one. When we get to the portion that there's a SuperDuo above, that's where we're going to add an 11-0 and on to the next grouping of our 2 SuperDuos that we just added in the last row around. Between those 2 SuperDuos, add 1 more SuperDuo, then an 11-0. So the pattern's always going to be opposite. So once you've got it, you know what it is, you can keep going. So on goes a SuperDuo, through the next one, and this is catching all that second holes of the SuperDuos that we just added in the group of 2. And again, when you're on the outside, you add an 11. When you're on the inside, you add another SuperDuo. Give a little yank as you're going along. When you pull the thread too, you always want to make sure that you're pulling the thread and that you're not pulling the needle, which can actually kind of fray the thread that sits inside of the needle. So I'm going through every other here, adding in 6 more of my SuperDuos, and an 11-0 between each set of those. So I have one more SuperDuo to add. And then from here, I'm going to go through my last SuperDuo. And then you can see I'm back to that thread that we did the step up on. Add an 11-0. So through that bead where the step up is, as well as through that first SuperDuo that you put on that's coming through or in between those beads. I've got a tight bead on here. If you ever get a bead that doesn't fit over your needle, chances are that Duracoat coating got a little thick. You can either take it off, or sometimes with a size 12 needle you won't have to worry about it. So I took that off, switched it out, no problem. Give that a little tight pull and you can see that bell starting to happen even more. From here you're going to step up again, going from that top hole to the bottom hole of this last set of SuperDuos that we have put on. And now we get to put our little bell ring on. It's going to be 2 of our crystals separated by one of our 11-0. I'm going to also make it a little bit more frilly by adding some extra seed beads along the end. So we need a couple more of our bicones out here. And again, between that second hole of the seed beads, or the SuperDuos, we're adding bicone, 11, bicone, into the next empty hole of the next SuperDuo. Ready again, bicone, seed bead, bicone, into the next SuperDuo. So this is going to get repeated 6 times to get our little kind of floating out of that bell. And it's a tight spit, so that's what makes it kind of look like it's kind of has that skirt on the bell. And a couple more on here. Getting these in through that SuperDuo. Got another one of my tight beads here. All right, and then to finish it out, the last 2 crystals separated by that 11-0 seed bead, and then into that first SuperDuo, and into the first crystal, and out that first 11-0 seed bead. This now has that bottom portion of my bell, so you can see it kind of sits up and it has that little frailed out portion. I'm going to enhance it even more, and I want to do a little bit of seed bead trim. I'm going to do the seed bead trim in my 15-0 color, which is a light pewter color, going for that vintagey look. And what I want you to do is, coming out that 11-0 seed bead, we are going to add on to our needle and thread. You're going to add 6 of your 15s, and I'm 1 short. You're going to go through that next SuperDuo in line. And see how that adds just that little kind of skirt on there. From here, I want you to add 3 more 15s. Circle back around that same SuperDuo. So the thread's coming out the bottom, I'm going into the top. And this is just a little bit added decor to the end, which was not on Cheryl's, but I'm making it a little bit fancier. Add on 6 more 15s and on to the next 11-0. At the 11-0, I'm going to let them stick out. So I'm not going to do any seed beads there. Add 6 more 15s into the next SuperDuo. Again, just through that SuperDuo. Once I'm through the SuperDuo, 3 more of our 15s get added. Back through the SuperDuo. So you're going to continue this the whole way along this bottom to get a little bit of kind of that little fringe happening at the bottom of the bell. And then what we're going to do is we're going to come back to the top here using this thread at the top, and we're going to pull the bell together to make that nice rounded cone shape. After you go around the piece, putting in all of your seed beads, you're going to be coming out one of your 11-0 seed beads. I want you to step up through and go through the first 4 of those 6 15s that you put on below the first crystal. I'm going to add 1 more level of bling to my bell. From here, I'm going to add 1 crystal, and then I'm going to hop over to the next seed beads that are below the crystal, pick up the middle 2 seed beads. So remember, we put on a grouping of 6. I'm ignoring the 3 beads that sit over the SuperDuo. Those are going to sit above. And I'm going from one grouping of 6 to the next grouping of 6. Always catching on to the groupings of 6 and then catching on to those middle 2 beads. So beads 3 and 4. Add in the crystal. Pick up another crystal. Go over to the next grouping of 6 and go through beads 3 and 4. Again, those beads that sit around the SuperDuos are just going to kind of sit up. And this will bring the bell to almost like it has a little edge. Going in, adding a bicone. Sewing through the next 2 middle beads in my next grouping of 6. And we're going to go the whole way around, adding in the crystals. Always catching to the middle 2 beads in each grouping of 6. Again, remember that the beads that are already, or the beads that are sitting on top of kind of the SuperDuo are just going to hang out there just as a little fringe above. Add another crystal. Keep going the whole way around here. Remember, we have that thread at the top because the thread at the top is going to be what we are going to be using in order to do our top and bring our bell together. So the thread here, on to the next 2. And you can see that nice kind of edge effect that it's getting. I like to give it a little bit more substance to the bell. Into my next grouping of 6. And I have then my last couple crystals as I go around to add in. Always adding a crystal, picking over to my next grouping of 6, and catching on to the 2 middle beads. If you want to, you can see I'm holding it so that it's domed inward, and that I'm holding it basically from the bottom of the bell. That, I think, is the easiest way to hold it. Making sure, too, as you're going around, that those seed beads that sit above the SuperDuo stay to the top. Adding in my last couple beads then. I'll go around this circle here. And then at this point, my bottom is done. If you want to, you can actually stop where Cheryl did and stop with the first or the last row of crystals as we're working on it. And see with this one here, those seed beads above that SuperDuo want to sit to the bottom. Just push them to the top. And what I'm going to do is grab with my needle and just kind of pull those seed beads to the top of the design. Make them sit above and then pull my last crystal. One more crystal goes on. And then as you're doing this last crystal here, you're going to sew through those first 2 beads there, beads 3 and 4 of that first grouping of 6. And then again at this point here, the bottom of your bell is all finished. And we're going to move on to the top. So as I pull the bottom there, you can see that nice kind of little scalloped edge that happens into the bottom of that bell, getting it nice and fuller at the bottom. And now coming up to the top, we're going to go in and we're going to pull the top together to make the bell even more finished as we pull in the top. Then we're going to grab our head pin and make a little portion to the bottom of the bell for it to look like it has a little bead inside that is getting ready to actually make it chime. So here at the top of the bell, I put another needle on this thread, and I'm coming out towards actually the base of the bell. I'm going to take my thread and needle through the bicone that sits next in that right angle weave unit that sits almost connecting those 2 SuperDuos, and then I'm going to go through the one that sits along the top, one of the ones that the holes are going vertically. From here, between each of my crystals, I'm just going to sew them tight around one another with a 15-0 that's going to link them all together. So you're going to sew 15-0 and then into the next crystal. Whole way around here, doing one of those light pewter beads, sewing around those top beads. So remember, between the bottom of our right angle weave unit, we added the SuperDuos. Between the top here, we're adding the 15-0s. So I'm circling around, adding my 15-0s in between my crystals. As I come through the last one here, I'm going to make sure to go through the 15 and the crystal that sit at the very, very end. Pull that nice and tight, and that's going to bring that right angle weave kind of bell section together. From here, to begin the netting, we are coming out of one of the crystals, and we are going to start to, at the top here, connect the netting from the seed bead all the way over to the next seed bead. We're going to add 2 15s, 1 11 and 2 15s. So coming out through the 15-0, what gets added again is 2 15s, 1 11, 2 15s, and then we sew into the next 15-0 that we just added, ignoring the crystal that sits below it. From here again, we continue this over, 2 15s, oops, 1 11, 2 15s. Skip the crystal into the next 15. So you're going to repeat this a total of 6 times with that netting, which is going to help us to get smaller and smaller at the top. If you don't like the idea of making this into an ornament or a pendant, you can use some SuperDuos and some 3mm crystals and pretty much do the same exact counts to make it into a smaller version. If you have SOs or Super 8s, you could do that also. Going in here, that's my 4th one here. I need 2 more. And then it's so simple at the end here. Going in, taking from this right angle weave unit of 4, and adding the netting. So you're learning multiple techniques here with the netting and with that right angle weave. When you get to the last one here, what I want you to do is go into the 15-0 that your thread was originally coming out of, and then just like we were doing at the bottom, you're stepping up through those first 2 15s as well as through the 11-0 that sits along the top. What you can see now is you have a cute little flower pattern, and we're going to bend that in towards the center and start to create that bell topping. Around the top here, what I want you to do is with your 15-0s, you're going to link together using 2 15s in between each one of your 11-0 seed beads. So we're going to do a 15-15, link over between the 11-0. You can see that starts to bring it in. 15-15, 11-0. 15s. So again, because we're repeating this, we're doing it 6 times. Going all the way around, you're going to end up using 8 or 12 of your 15-0s this time around. From here then, you can see that the start of that Christmas ball is getting a little bit smaller, or that Christmas bell is getting smaller, and we still have one more section of our netting to do. And I want you to come out of the 11-0 seed bead. That's next in line. And from here, you're going to be adding in 2 of your 15s, 1 11, and then we're only going to do this 3 times. So you're skipping one of your next 11s, and you're going into the next one in line. From here again, 2, 1, 2, skipping the next one and going into the next 11. So you're always skipping 1 11, going into the next one. One more time here. 2 15s. Gotta get a couple more here. 2 15s go on. 1 11, 2 15s. From here, again, skip the 11, and you're going back into the original 11 that your thread was coming out of. Last but not least, sew up to the 11-0 that you just added, that first one going up the sides. Add a 15, sew over to the next 11-0 that you just added. Add a 15, sew through to the next 11-0 that sits at the top. So you're grabbing those three 11s that you just added. There you go, 3 11s, and back to the original starter 11. My thread is getting short. If you left 10 inches rather than the 6 that I did, you'll have plenty. And you do that last one there. Nope. I got 2 seed beads in there. I'll kind of take one of those off. But that finishes out the bell. So you have this cute little bell that sits with all of these beads on the interior and exterior. And whether or not you want to do it in the ruby colors or you want to go vintage, you can have fun kind of creating that different version of the bell. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this thread that's at the bottom and we're going to go one more time kind of around the bottom, reinforcing. And then what I want you to do after you do that is bring it back up to the middle of the project. If you want to, you can bring it up to the middle, you can bring this one down to the middle, and then literally just tie off the thread ends. You can also bring them to the middle of the project and tie off the thread ends in there as well, since what we're going to be doing is, for this little ornament, is putting a head pin in the middle and getting our little bell situated at the bottom. After you finish the top and the bottom of your bell and kind of burn off the thread ends here, it's going to be time to put in your little gong for the middle. In hers, Cheryl just has a little rounded bead that sits at the bottom of a head pin in there. Kind of hard to show you there. I'm going to, since I have these Potomac Crystal Briolettes here, I'm going to take a Briolette and use it. You can use, if you only have a head pin, you can use a head pin, that's fine. You can use plain wire. If you only have a head pin, you can put your head pin through your crystal. And just be careful you don't break the top of your Briolette off. That's always the hard thing with Briolettes. And just kind of bend that bead. See, that gets bent basically into a 90-degree angle. And then the other side as well, making sure that you're not breaking that crystal again. If you happen to and you have a pack, guess what? You've got 20 more to use, or 24 more to use. So from there, I'm just going to take my thread and just kind of make that little turn in it. Because it's not actually going to be an actual earring or anything, I'll just let that head pin on, something decorative. And then I'm going to fill the actual pin part with my 4mm bicones that I have left, because these 4mm bicones will allow it to sit down so you can see a little bit. That head pin then goes straight through that middle at that top where we went in and we have those 3 seed beads. And you can play around with the length. I want to see a little bit that bell, so you can see it kind of just peeking out there from the bottom. Then what I'm going to do is take a round nose pliers, and I'm actually going to take an 11-0 and stick it on the top after to kind of hold it in there, kind of finish off that end. And then you can either do a coiled link or you can do just a plain turned over loop. And I love what Cheryl did, that she just put hers as a little ornament. You could do, these aren't that big, you could do them as earrings, you could do it as a pendant, but I like that she just put it on a simple little piece of kind of wrapping thread here and hung it as an ornament. I'm going to go in here, coil that loop, and finish it off. And I'm going to use this as an ornament as well. So I'll go home and I get to hang this on my Christmas tree to have it ready to go. And you can see that cute little bell on the inside just kind of hanging out, and it's a really cute little ornament design. I've always said that I want to get an entire tree with homemade beaded ornaments and beaded designs, and I am making my way to there between that, and I used my wreath from last year that we did as an ornament as well. So I'm getting there, but this is a really cute way to just do a really simple little Christmas bell that you can use and as an embellishment. You can have it on somebody's package that you're tying off, you can hang it on the Christmas tree, or you can even make it into a pair of earrings, because when you have it on a pair of earrings, it's really not that long too when you're looking at it. Thanks again for making the Jingle Bell ornament. Keep in mind you can do it as a pair of earrings, you can do it as a pendant, and you can have fun making these in all different colors. Again, if you need any of the materials, it's listed below the video in the description. The links to purchase from us from PotomacBeads.com as well as PotomacBeads.eu. If you want to, you can even subscribe to this YouTube channel, and then you get regular updates from us when we do new videos and new designs that we think that you should take a look at. As always, thank you so much for watching, and enjoy making your own Jingle Bell ornament.